The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Digati, and with me, the darker side of comedy, we have Dark Mark, the Goth comedian. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Rocky. How are you?
Oh, I'm not as dark as you are. So tell me.
We're going to find that out. I
right.
have a feeling you are.
I think everybody has a dark side. We just choose to embrace it. So tell me about how one evolves into a dark comic, a gothic comic.
Well, being in hell, aka LA, helps. But it's like what came first, goth or comedy? And for me, they sort of came around about the same time when I was in college, which we see how well that turned out. I went to college for 6 years, and here I am talking to you in a studio apartment. But I started doing comedy in college. It was an odd story. My cousin was he was trying to be an actor, and he got some roles. The funniest roles, he got me a role, and this is dating me, but it was kind of an America's Most Wanted sort of knockoff. It's called Crime Stoppers.
Oh yeah, I remember crime. I'm a crime junkie. I get it.
Yeah, they would reenact crimes, and they would have actors play, and then they would try to find the criminals, right? So this was a gangland shooting in San Diego, Mexican gangs. And my cousin is a very dark Italian-looking guy, so he could pass for it. I mean, we were people in the crowd, so we could pass for it. Me, don't let the hair dye fool you. My natural color of my hair is very light brown, almost blondish, and I have blue eyes. And so they kind of put me in a bandana, and I was like running around with, 100 Mexican-looking guys. Yeah. No, they didn't put sunglasses on me because I don't think I was that close to the camera. But seriously, I never saw the actual tape of it, but I could just imagine I stood out like, hey, who's that crazy vato over there, the gringo? I don't know, but so
yeah,
there was a comedy contest at the Comedy Store in La Jolla, and we were in San Diego, and he's like, I'm going to enter the comedy contest. And that evolved, my cousin Dave, that evolved to, well, why don't you write it to, all right, well, you write your thing and you write my thing and we'll both perform. He chickened out and I ended up performing. And this wasn't the first time I was on stage, though. The first time I was ever on stage doing comedy was when I was in 7th grade.
Really?
At the talent show, yeah. Everybody else was doing, marionette things and Kiss air bands and all this other stuff, and I went
Kiss
up,
air bands.
did a comedy routine, and just and break dancing, all sorts of things. So I went up, did a comedy routine, and it was great. I wish I remembered the material because I killed, and it was clean. It had to be clean, obviously.
Sure, it was school.
So,
it was 7th grade.
So I mean, I heard my sister said I did that 7th and 8th grade. My sister said that she was in the back, and there was a pregnant teacher that almost gave birth. She was laughing so hard. So
now, did you write your own stuff for your routine?
Yeah.
All right. Well, no, because one time in debate class, I had to do a presentation, and it could be something, you didn't have to write it yourself per se. You had to just, either present something. And I did George Carlin's "A Place for My Stuff."
That's a good
one. Cleaned up.
Yeah. And did you win the debate contest?
I did not win a debate contest. I got a B.
Like somebody's like, hey, a house is not a place for your stuff. I got a whole contrary opinion on that. Yeah, I don't know how you debate.
I got down to the Visine and the nail clippers. I think that's where I lost it.
It's a place for your stuff. Anyway, so actually, in looking back at the talent show, I was probably the only person that actually wrote their material, because
that's very cool.
People were doing acting, they were doing dancing, they were doing singing. I got some people sang original songs, I would suppose. It's been a while since I've been in 8th grade, 7th grade. So
oh well, all of us.
I ended up so I ended up at the Comedy Store at this comedy contest and did not win. But and I was the material that I wrote that I had slaved for over 2 months since we were hatching this whole plan was awful. That it bombed. Like every single, there was one joke that did well, and everything else just bombed.
Oh no!
Except my I would ad lib with the audience about how bad I was doing, and I would get laughs for that. So I was like,
you'd heckle yourself.
I basically heckled myself. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Innovative.
and so I tried doing comedy again, and it wasn't like today. Today, everybody does comedy. My dry cleaner does comedy. Everybody does comedy. I was actually talking to a comic last week on my podcast, Erica Ennis, because she said she had crippling stage fright when she started doing comedy. I said, you realize that the fear of public speaking used to be the number 3 fear in the nation. It's been cured. It's been cured because everybody is doing comedy and has a podcast. No offense. But everybody, well, and they're on social media, they're doing TikTok videos. Everybody
That's true,
wants
though.
to talk now. Everybody's like, no, I can't talk. I'm so nervous. Now they're like, this is what I'm doing my whole day. And you're like, yeah, you're still boring. But, want
to see my dinner?
Yeah, and that's why I can't get any traction on TikTok because maybe people are that fascinated of what I'm having for dinner. But
what did you have for dinner, Mark?
I haven't had dinner yet. It's 4:30 here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we've got a time difference going.
Honestly, I'm going to have a protein shake for dinner because I'm on a diet and exercise plan. I've lost at least 12 pounds.
Fantastic.
Well, I wish I was more, but I'm working on it. It's slowly but surely. It's going in the right direction.
That's awesome. You're out in LA. That's like home of the fit, land of the brave.
Right. So it wasn't until like the 3rd time I did comedy where I kind of hit on something that worked consistently. Now, the Goth thing, with the second part of your question, I've been talking for 5 minutes now. I can answer your question. I was San Diego again. It was a Friday night, and I was doing, and the kids are not going to know about this, but you and I remember when they had video stores.
Oh, sure. That was a big
sometimes
deal.
on a Friday night. It was. I think I worked that night, so it was 9 or 10. I was like, I'm just going to rent a video and chill at home. So that was a Netflix and chill in my day, except I was alone and I probably was getting some sort of soft porn to masturbate to. But I went to
Blockbuster and Balls then?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't Blockbuster. Well, Blockbuster didn't have the good soft porn. They had it, but they didn't have the unrated version. That's why you had to go to your
mom and pop
video stores for. Yeah. I didn't do the back room. I'm not big on porn. I talk about it in my act. I don't masturbate to porn. I masturbate to Lifetime movies. But they used to have these like real soft. I like soft porn better than hard porn. It's a lot of hard porn, and I'm getting filthy already. But it's really close-ups of and close-ups.
It looks like a piston engine. Yeah, made of flesh.
I wish it looked that good. It's a close-up of a really odd discolored penis going into a rash-filled vagina, and I'm not hot on that. However, when you have soft porn, you have like somebody beautiful, and they're going through the motions, and you can look at their breasts and their ass and everything else. And anyway, I digress. So I was going.
Yes,
I was actually probably going to get a regular. So what happened was, I saw this woman walking into a club that was next door to the Tower Video I was going to. Really pale, and I realized shortly before this that every woman I've ever really had a crush on was horrifyingly pale.
Did it start with Lily Munster? I have to know.
No, it really didn't. I like the Munsters, but
they're fun.
I mean, maybe Elvira. I don't know, but honestly, it was.
I'm straight, and even I gotta say Elvira is hot.
Elvira's very hot.
Oh yeah, I gotta look towards
and Lily Munster's hot too. I just wasn't a huge Munsters guy or an Addams Family guy. I probably should go back and rewatch that, but I liked them. I liked them when I was a kid, but they were in black and white too, so it's like you can't really. It's already black and white. Like Lucy's pale in black and white. Mary Tyler Moore's pale in black and white. So.
Rob.
Yeah.
Dick Van Dyke.
The old Dick Van Dyke shows.
Yeah.
Mary Tyler Moore was hot. Nobody could rock a free trance like that.
I was just gonna say it had to be the pedal pushers, man, because I don't get it.
And Mary Tyler Moore was still hot in the Mary Tyler Moore show, but she was wearing 70s clothes, and I don't like bell bottoms. I always thought those were like the least attractive things I've ever seen.
They're
So
odd.
it's like, and she was in color, and you could see she was tan. It's like, go back to the black and white in the 60s. Anyway, so this beautiful woman, pale woman, goes into this club.
The goddess of the night.
Yeah, so it's like, what's going on there? Let me check that out. And I walk in, it was like, it was like a white light hit me. It was like, ooh, and it was like, and I was listening to music, which was very industrial music, and which is really, it's like, because I was a fan of metal, I was a fan of dance music, and this is like, wait a second, this is metal you can dance to.
So Trent Reznor did this to you?
Well, I was already a Nine Inch Nails fan, and I was already dabbling in industrial. Like I heard some Ministry, and I liked it, but this was stuff I hadn't heard, and I was like, wow, this is I love this, and just the girls were all just pale, and there was that S&M element. They were all wearing corsets and things, and it was like I found
it all looks so very binding
in a good way.
In a good way.
And it's funny. I used to do a bit in my act. I was like, well, it's too bad they don't make corsets for men. Take the balls, stick them right up there for your view. And I did that at the DomCon this year. Going out of focus. I don't know if that was a corset talk or what, but I was at DomCon this year, and I told that joke, and it bombed horribly. And everybody's like, they make them for balls, and then they were showing me, oh, okay, because they know. But
now you're stuck.
Yeah, whatever. It's
you did it now.
Well, it's hard when you're doing comedy in front of a bunch of people with whips. You better be funny, and I didn't get whipped, but it was an odd crowd. Honestly, it wasn't my best set. I have to be honest, but half the crowd were dying. Like one woman that literally fell to the floor laughing, and half the crowd didn't find it funny. So it was a split crowd. So it was hard to say. But they didn't announce that I was coming on. They didn't know I was coming on. They didn't. And I honestly, there's a whole different set I could have done that would have just wrecked the place, and I didn't do it. So these things happen artistically. You know how it is.
Yeah, well, I the folks that are familiar with me through the podcast know that I'm a performer, musician, and part of my fatal flaws on this podcast is I think I'm funny, but and you were talking about how on TikTok and anything, like there's no more, everybody can have a platform now, anyone, me included, and we are of an age. I'm not funny about my age. I'm going to be 54. I had to think about it. I'm going to be 54, and
you hardly look it.
Oh well, thank you. They're not going to know. I got to face for radio, so radio I look 25. But
well, trust me, you would never know.
And it's funny though, because it's like everybody's got a shtick. There was a time when it was difficult to get any kind of. I did try a stand-up night once, a stand-up open mic.
Everybody has.
Providence, Rhode Island, and it actually went well.
Recently?
No, this is a great story. I was 17 years old, and I looked and sounded older. So I put on like a funky outfit, had my high top chucks, and walked in like I owned the place. Ordered a drink, just and I don't know how I was allowed to like be out late, do all this crazy shit that I did, but and I did it, and I slayed it, and it was great. And then I just realized, then I started carding people, and I never got in again.
Funny you should say that, because I really am. If I could go back in time, I would have started comedy earlier than I did, because when I did that comedy contest, I was 19. So what they did was, technically, you're not supposed to be in a club, although I've found out subsequently, a lot of comics started before they were 20. Chappelle started before he was 21, Rosie O'Donnell, my friend Dante, who was actually the host that night, and he was the host the first time I did a stand-up set at the Comedy Store. Because I was 19, and they had me wait outside the club, go in and do my set, and then go back out.
Right.
Pete Davidson started before he was 21. And then, like, when I did that thing, I was like, well, I can't wait to do comedy again. But I thought I had to wait till I was 21, and I didn't. I could have just kept coming to the club, and they would have done the same thing. They would have had me wait outside, walk in the club, and then go back outside.
Well,
I've seen
I
other.
was sneaking in as a teenager. The drinking age at the time was newly actually 21, and
Yeah,
yeah, I was. And the thing, I was emboldened by my amazing debate performance with a place for my stuff, and I figured I could go, you know,
sure.
and because I think, and let me know your thoughts on this. There's a big difference between people who are funny and people who are comedians. That's two different animals.
But it really is, and that's what people. But here's the thing: it's getting blurred now because a lot of people that aren't funny are doing comedy. And it's some people. I see people on stage all the time. I'm like, who told you were funny? When did you ever make anybody laugh? But it's just comedy is the new rock star.
It's
Rock is dead, comedy's alive, and
and it used to be the dorks. Comedians were never they were the goofballs.
well, they were mostly not attractive either. And now they're all, there's so many models on walking on stage. But what used to happen was, and I've said this before, people that would have formed punk bands or indie rock bands, there's no music industry anymore, so there are no
No.
comedians. I moved to New Orleans. I was living in New Orleans for a while. Half the comics
okay.
I was performing with, were failed white rappers. But yeah, there's no music. I mean, I hate to tell you because you're a musician and you're going out with musicians.
No, as a musician, I'm agreeing with you 100%.
There's
Back in the day, it was you tried to get a tape together, you tried to get somebody influential to hear your tape, you tried to get you played out, it was like the one. I'm a big classic rock fan. Song by Boston, Rock and Roll Music, and they were playing for a week in Rhode Island, and a man came to the stage one night, yada yada, happened allegedly at Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel in Providence, where Boston got signed, and that kind of that doesn't happen.
Boston got signed in Rhode Island.
They did, oddly enough, allegedly, if the song is to be believed.
I've heard different. I've heard different stories. I heard that Boston, they were sending tapes around to record companies, and the record company loved the demo. They finally got somebody to hear the demo, and they said, "We love it, but we need you to record it in studio with a real producer." And they went in with a producer and told the producer, "Look, we're not re-recording this. Just say what we did." And they sent them back the demo, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's great." And that's what the first Boston album was.
Well, how bad could it be? You start off with your lead guitarist as an MIT engineer.
Well, that's the thing. So he knew sound, and he knew
Tom Schultz is a genius.
Absolutely, and
absolutely. Very cool.
And More Than a Feeling is one of those songs that if you say you don't like it, you're just being an asshole. Everybody,
really, you are.
I mean, you can not like other Boston songs, but More Than a Feeling is, and continues to be. It's a timeless song, and it's.
Ever listen to the strip track? There is, if you go on YouTube and check out the isolated track, the isolated vocal track of Brad Delp singing that, may he rest in peace. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, it's amazing. On
that guy. Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, they really juiced it up. That high note is really just the guitar. It goes into the stratosphere. Yeah, it's crazy. I can't.
It's funny because I had a girlfriend, and she was a singer, and she actually was a songwriter, and she had written some songs. Actually, Seal recorded one of her songs.
Oh, fantastic!
But I made the mistake of taking her to karaoke for the first date. No, that date was great. It was so much fun. I just didn't want to do it every Saturday and Sunday night for the next 6 months, which I ended up doing.
Oh dear!
And we ended up I was in Tarzan at the time, which is in the West Valley of Los Angeles, and there was a karaoke club there. This is the thing, like everybody, like this is the thing with comedy. There's a lot of karaoke comedy, but you see a lot of people that that they just want to get on stage and have people look at it. A lot of comedians here do karaoke too, but so I ended up being a karaoke widow because there was a whole karaoke table that were like pros. They thought they were the pros. These are the people that go up on karaoke, like, excuse me, that's in the wrong key and stuff like that. So I ended up at the table by default because I was with her, but they loved her. They were just tolerating me.
Oh, they're hardcore. They're crazy.
Well, they were tolerating me because A, I was with her, and B, they were trying to steal her away from me, which they never really did. So I remember one time I was telling her, I'm like, man, that more than the feeling, that vocals are amazing. She's like, it's not that amazing. Anybody can do it. I'm like, really? Go ahead, do it. And so she did it at karaoke, and she did okay. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. And my friend, we took my friend who was in a metal band in the '80s, and they were signed, but they broke up. They broke up after they were signed. They were called Wicked Gypsy, Wickedgy. Anyway, oh gee, I there's some weird spelling. I mean, they were so big in the late '80s, early '90s that Stone Temple Pilots opened for them. Smashing Pumpkins opened for them. Obviously, they were on their way up, and they were these guys. So this guy was a legitimate vocalist that was signed to a record company. And when they would sing, you're like, okay, my girlfriend's a really good singer, but you could tell the difference between her and this guy who was actually signed to a contract. It's different.
80s metal is very challenging for any range. It's pretty wild stuff,
He ironically broke
David
up.
Coverdale is not to be trifled with.
No. And although honestly, I am glad grunge came along for this reason, in that there's only so much of that high singing I can take. Me personally, and it's funny because my friend broke up Wicked Gypsy, the metal band, and started a goth band called The Brood. And you can find Wicked Gypsy stuff out there on YouTube and other sites, but when you Google The Brood, all you get is the WWF tag team. But I love a lot of metal, but some of it, like Iron Maiden, Dio, and Queensryche, and it's very talented, the singing, but it's just too high. I just can't. It's too much. Robert Plant modulated it, and a lot of these guys aren't modulated.
I don't like Robert Plant. I don't like Led Zeppelin.
All right,
I know. That's fighting words in those circles.
No, it's fine. No, you can.
Everybody's how?
You're entitled.
Why? How can you not? I accord them.
You acknowledge the talents.
Absolutely. And everyone goes, how is it you love hard rock, which I do, and you love blues and play blues, which I do, and you don't like Led Zeppelin? That's hard rock and blues.
That's fine. You're entitled.
You know what I tell them? Listen to Black Sabbath's first album. After that, you're not going to convince me. Right. Black Sabbath's first album, to me, is what everyone is trying to convince me Led Zeppelin is, and they did it. And I love it.
Pete Townsend didn't like Led Zeppelin. The Rolling Stones didn't like Led Zeppelin. Here's the thing: you can say you don't like
Pete Townsend. See me, touch me, feel me. Now we know.
That's a whole different thing.
That is a whole different thing.
But
a whole nother story.
Yes. Well, I don't know how I got on this classic rock tangent, but I will say this: people let you not like Led Zeppelin.
Not around here.
I'm the one person in the world who dramatic pause does not like the Beatles.
Oh no!
See, that's fighting. And here's the thing: the Beatles are so overrated. And I'm going to tell you why, whether you like them or not.
I like them. There's a difference.
Everybody else in the world does, but I'm going to tell you.
I like them. I'm selective. I don't love all of it, and I'm not crazy for it. They have songs I really like. Some.
They're the most overrated band. I'm going to tell you, because if you actually make a statement that you don't like a Beatles song, people start yelling at you and questioning your sanity, questioning your mental ability, and just really just let you have it, and think you know nothing about the music. Music is taste.
It really is. It's
listened to the Beatles
comedy.
so much. Of course, I listened to the Beatles so much when I was a kid. My mom loved the Beatles, loves the Beatles, played the Beatles, and so I've heard and through cultural osmosis, I've heard every Beatles song so many times. And there's a couple of songs that are okay, but most of it. Here's the thing. It's funny because I thought this one up when I went to see Marilyn Manson and they played Beatles as the music while they were 28. Explain to me this. And this is sacrilege to a lot of people.
Okay.
How is Back in the USSR a good song? It's not. It sucks.
I wouldn't really. It's kind of. I think it's the only thing fun about that song is that they got the Beach Boys involved, and I think it's kind of
the Beach Boys suck too. But you can say that. Not everybody likes the Beach Boys.
My thing with the Beach Boys is I like the classic stuff because it's more of a mood than the music. It's an image. It's a feeling. It's like summer in a song. But I am of the camp that does relegate Pet Sounds, the album, production wise, into a whole new realm because they did things on that album. And it's not about the music, it's about the production that has made me exalt that particular. And you'll hear a lot of musicians tell you, oh, wow, Pet Sounds. And
Well, I've heard that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
what songs are on Pet Sounds? I have no idea.
Pet Sounds in my room would be one I believe I remember correct. Yeah, and that's not.
I forgot this on audio. I'm rolling my eyes. In Your Room is not a good song, but probably as well produced. I don't know, but
it is. The Pet Sounds actually they did things with dubs and stuff. They broke ground, and from there they changed how recordings were made with that album. With some of the stuff they innovated.
Should they be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Will I listen to a Beach Boys album? I don't think I've ever listened to one all the way through, and I'm fine with that. And the weird thing about the Beatles is I like Beatles inspired artists better than the Beatles. I like Oasis. I like Cheap Trick. I don't like the Beatles.
I like when other people do Beatles songs. I think Joe Cocker killed it.
I don't.
Love Joe Cocker. Well,
although I did watch Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the movie, and I laughed hysterically.
The only thing that was fun about that movie for me was and this might be geographic because I grew up in New England. It could be the time I grew up because I grew up in the 70s. I have this weird crush on Joe Perry from Aerosmith.
Well, and you wouldn't be the only one.
I thought, and maybe this is my dark side. I always thought it was hot because in my head, the devil looks a little bit like Joe Perry. So that worked for me. Look, you have your Lifetime Hallmark movies, okay? You just go rent Not Without My Daughter and have one on. I'm going to stare at Joe Perry.
Right. To hear George Burns and all these other bands.
Oh, that was just kooky. Steve Martin was involved.
Steve Martin was singing everything. Yeah, it's really, really ridiculous. And also.
And I love Billy Preston. I'm a big
Billy Preston was great.
Fantastic.
But
he was the fifth Beatle.
I'm sure he was, but
all the keyboards you hear on most of their hits, things like that crazy solo on Get Back, Let It Be, that's Billy Preston. He played studio and toured with them. He's fantastic. He was fantastic. But on his solo stuff is what I dig. But goth music, I don't know that much about.
All right, well let me educate.
I need an education. Help me out here.
Well, there's some that you like, and I'm sure there's some that you will like. But here's the thing. And I mentioned Marilyn Manson before. Marilyn Manson is not goth metal, but let's go back. So goth was an offshoot of punk music. Basically, Susie Sue of Susie and the Banshees.
Oh, I remember Susie and the Banshees. Sure.
Yeah, she was hanging out with the Sex Pistols. Did you see the Sex Pistols thing on Hulu or wherever it was?
I have not.
Well, I mean, it's like I was like, well, is there anything about the Sex? I mean, it was so over documented. I love the Sex Pistols, but they've been over documented so much. There's so many movies and TV shows and documentaries about them. It's like, is there anything new they're going to bring out? And no, there really wasn't. But I mean, Sid and Nancy, which is not realistic, but really turns them into a legend and is a fanciful tale on its own, is great. So you're not going to match that. But the weird thing about the Sex Pistols story is it has it was based on Steve Jones's autobiography, but half the movie's about Chrissie Hynde from the Pretenders, who used to hang out with the Sex Pistols, which Steve Jones, and almost everybody involved in the production has acknowledged she didn't hang out with the Sex Pistols that much. Like, she's in every chapter of the Sex Pistols story. She's there, and to the point where it ends with Steve Jones going to a Pretenders concert, and you're like, why don't you just do the Pretenders story? Nobody's done that, and then the Sex Pistols can be involved in that. So basically, Susie Sue would hang out with the Sex Pistols. When the Sex Pistols were on TV and they were swearing and that was a big deal, she was in the background. She was there. So punk, there was only so much you could do with the three chords and being loud, and Ramones, Sex Pistols, Clash pretty much did what you could do with it. And then Joy Division kind of came out of the post-punk thing. There's a very famous concert in Manchester where the Sex Pistols played, and members of the Buzzcocks were there. The guy from Simply Red was there. Like, so many bands were there, and two of the guys from Joy Division, which later became New Order, were there, and they formed a band. So Joy Division really was the first punk band. And then this is about 77, 78. And it's them, Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus, The
Oh
Cure.
yeah, I remember Bauhaus. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bauhaus, The Cure, all these bands.
I went to college in Boston in the 80s.
Oh well, then you couldn't escape it. Bauhaus.
You could not till Tuesday and all that.
Yeah. So it was amazing because doing the podcast you'll get to meet people you normally wouldn't meet, and I had David J, the bass player of Bauhaus, later of Love and Rockets, and I told him I used to love Love and Rockets before I loved Bauhaus. I knew Bauhaus, I knew a couple songs, but I was really a big fan of Love and Rockets before I became a big fan of Bauhaus. Pre-Goth, I was really into Love and Rockets. Post-Goth, I really started listening to Bauhaus and Peter Murphy solo. So I got to interview him, and he was like, the day before, he's like, "Do you mind if I bring Sasha Grey into the studio with me?" The name didn't even. I once again, I don't watch porn. Obviously, you do because you would recognize it right away. But
it's a long story. But yeah, I know who that is.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. So, Sasha Grey, and he's like, so I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I Googled her. I'm like, oh yeah, that girl. And she was, I knew that she was picked for a Steven Soderbergh movie. I never seen her porn. And I was like, okay, that'll be interesting. So I researched her a little bit. I posted it on the internet, and people went crazy, like, holy shit, how did you get Sasha Grey to come on your show? And it was like, and then I did the show, and one of the comments on YouTube, and almost all of the comments on YouTube were like, this sucks, this guy won't shut up, and all this. And I'll be honest, I was very nervous in studio. Everybody from every other show that I was doing in the studio at the time showed up. The manager showed up. Everybody wanted to meet Sasha Grey. Nobody gave a shit about David J. And one of the comments on YouTube was like, I can't believe this guy's fanboying about David J. But I was, because I pursued him for a while. It was one of my guests I really wanted to get. And I acknowledged that the first 20 minutes of the interview, I was really, really nervous. And so was my co-host at the time, Josie Cat. But I think the last 40 minutes, I got a lot of, I calmed down. And I think throughout the interview, there's a lot of things that he said that I've never seen him say on an interview before or since. It wasn't my best, but I still think it's a good show.
You got something there. Yeah.
I got something there. So including that, they, like every other goth band, did not acknowledge that they were goth. They hate the term, they hate the association. But they started really, reggae was an influence, especially
the ska, yeah.
Really, really hard, not even ska, but the hardcore reggae. And if you listen to Bauhaus, and if you really listen to the bass lines, they are very reggae influenced. Even Bela Lugosi's Dead, that is really
I got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that was like the first wave, was those bands, and they, and punk sort of made its way from the East Coast to the West Coast. So early 80s on the West Coast, you have Black Flag, Social Distortion, X, and all these other, although I never consider X a punk band, but they had a punk scene out here, Circle Jerks and all that. And then sort of in England and in the East, they had, all of these kind of goth bands sort of sprouted from The Cure and all these other bands. And then you had spin-offs like Depeche Mode. The eternal question is Depeche Mode goth?
It's art school music.
What is a goth? And here's the thing.
What is goth? I mean, that tends to be a label people put on all kinds of things. And it seems like that's an incredible misnomer in some cases.
It really is. And it's inconsistent. I mean, to me, it's the scene I fell into and the scene that I love. And part of the reason I love it is because I'm overweight and colorblind. So I get to wear all black. It makes things it's slimming and I don't have to match anything. So that's great. But it's embracing the macabre. It's basically embracing your dark side and letting it out. And instead of going out and showing all your colors and being happy, it's embracing the darker side of life. Embracing your introspection. You make light
of the dark side.
Yes. Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was looking for your show on Spotify. I don't know if it's on Spotify yet. It is, because I couldn't find it, but I will look again. So I want to hear some more episodes. But I came across another one that's in another show that was called The Lighter Side of Dark, which I thought was weird because since 2013, the tagline for the Dark Mark Show, my podcast, has been the lighter side of the dark side.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but it was weird because like
they're gonna get a letter.
No, but I might have to officially copyright the lighter side of the dark side. But
yeah,
like one of their topics on one of their shows was like the NFL draft. I'm like, I don't know if that's the lighter side of the dark.
Well, we have conversations on my show that we talk about music, even if it's not the main line. It's just I like to talk to interesting people.
No, I do too. I do too.
Yeah, and I like some of the folks that are a little on the darker, edgy side are gonna talk.
So that's your goth side. There you
go. That's my goth side. Well, it's fun to see me. Well, you can see me, and the rest of the world. There's pictures of me out there. I'm not particularly. I don't have a HWIC kind of vibe or whatever, but I'm a dark artist. I love I work in human bones, and it's funny when I'm at a show.
Head woman in charge.
Witch.
Oh, head witch in charge. Oh, you're a witch. Okay.
I am. I've
heard like every.
I am not. That's what I'm saying. I don't give. People expect either the witchy vibe, and everything. No, I don't. I'm just kind of a kooky artist, and people will come by my table, and I was at a horror convention, and the headlining like celebrities that were there were all from Dexter.
Okay.
And so it's a very hot show, and there's lots of people that follow it. And they're all wearing Dexter T-shirts. This is, and they love these characters. They love this show. And one lady walked by in a Dexter T-shirt, walks by my table, looks at the human bone jewelry, and looks at me and goes, "You're sick." And I was like, "You're at a horror convention."
I know.
And it's funny that oddly enough, the people that you got to watch the book cover things, because the people that are running around, quote unquote, all gothed up and everything, they give my table a wide berth. The really nerdy ones who look like they were dragged there against their will, they come over to my table and they love my stuff. A lot of my clients are academic, medical, and because what do you get the ortho who has everything?
Right.
You get him a vertebra necklace, of actual vertebra. And so the goth thing, it's become fashionable. Like when folks need to go and check out your YouTube stuff, and definitely check out your podcast as well, because your comedy's a lot of fun. It's fun to watch it on YouTube. You're in corpse paint.
Yes. I'm not in corpse paint right now.
No. Well, you can say you are. They can't see you.
Yeah, but my ex-girlfriend, she was the one that started putting makeup on me when I went to the goth clubs, and I was like, why don't I do this on stage? Nobody does this. And but I think if I was to define goth, I would say goth is white men's blues with zero blues influence.
Interesting.
So you take away the blues influence, and I say that, but
see, there's my problem. I have the blues influence.
No, I know you do. And they're a great. And let me tell you something. They're shitty white blues players. Let's be honest. But they're a great white blues. Steve Ray Vaughan, Johnny Winter. I mean, there's some great.
Benoit.
I don't know, but I will check.
You need to check that. I will send you links. I just saw him live. It's amazing, and he was playing with a fellow named Lightning Malcolm, also a delightful human, and they were amazing. And they're Southern boys from Mississippi and Louisiana, respectively. So great stuff.
I'm gonna send you a very old show that I did with a local blues artist here in LA, Lightning Woodcock.
Oh dear.
Very irreverent, but very good blues player. And that's the thing. When I started the podcast, I was like, I was going to make it, and this may be ultimately it's failing, but I was like, okay, it's going to be all goth all the time. And I was like, why limited? I want interesting people and different interesting people. And I think I'm going to start really narrowing it down to more goth influencers, because it's just me. I have such a varied interest in people.
The first time I saw corpse paint had nothing to do per se with goth. It was in a video that of the band Demu Borgir.
Right.
And love them. Amazing.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, fantastic. And they were with the Oslo Symphony Orchestra. I think it was either the open
that
air
sounds great.
Yeah. And it's very theatrical, and it's very dramatic. What was interesting is, of course, the band is regularly in corpse paint, but if you look into the Oslo Orchestra and you see all these like middle-aged people, from Norway playing their instruments. You'd see some younger faces in corpse paint in their tuxedo, playing their
Yeah, oh
violin,
yeah.
and it was great. So I see that and I'm like, well, that's kind of metal. But then I remember the goth, the
Well,
goth do it.
there's a variation. It's like,
Where does Peter Steele land in all of this?
well, he's right at the crossroads. He's goth and
Oh, because that's black,
right.
black number one, ain't it?
Black number one, yeah. So he's very much in the middle. So he has his voice is so deep that it's very goth. Their stuff is metal, but he kind of blends it all together. It's different things that different people. And
I love that
when
album.
you say corpse paint, obviously Kiss and Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
Alice Cooper invented
stuff.
all of it, really. I mean, let's be honest. Alice Cooper really did the makeup thing before anybody else.
He did.
He invented goth. He invented punk because Johnny Rotten's audition for the Sex Pistols was singing Alice Cooper. He invented metal. He invented everything, glam, all of that. So, so corpse paint was, really Kiss was the ones that
elevated
really
it.
But I mean, goth is not necessarily corpse paint because, and sometimes my makeup varies. Sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's not. But corpse paint is like white.
I get
corpse it. Corpse paint is, and the metal, black metal corpse paint, the traditional kind, is really like white cream, clown white
grease paint.
Whereas goth, there are goth powders to make you look whiter, but it's not really. It's not paints.
I'm a ginger in February. I'm basically a piece of paper.
You're turning me on so much.
Oh, good. Good
nothing. Don't tell your boyfriend. There's nothing hotter than a pale woman to me. But so it's a different thing, and different people do different things. But when goth started, you had Robert Smith would wear makeup and wear makeup, and it became a thing.
He was the fellow with the lipstick of like Betty Davis after the stroke.
That's right. Right. And so he. Boys Don't Cry, Just Like Heaven, all that. So then it spun off into all sorts of things, and Sisters of Mercy, and just weird variations. And then industrials kind of hit in the mid to late '80s, and that was they sort of carried on some of that. So when you go to goth clubs, it's usually a mix of goth, industrial, and now I had. Local goth DJ on my show last week, Tommy Skoski, and he said that a lot of it is now more EDM and techno related. So it's a sound that's ever evolving, but it's basically and people here's the thing: people mistake it for emo. And it's emo are the popular kids that want to be a little weird, but they don't have the courage to go all the way.
My older sister, who's 9 years older than me, shout out to Paula for this one, loves to. She's cool. Loves to say that look is let's all be weird together.
Right.
That's her famous bit. Let's all be weird together. Let's all be.
I want to be a little bit weird, but not alienate the cool kids.
Let's all be unique the same way.
But there's a lot of that.
It is, yeah.
There's a lot of everything.
Absolutely. Now, are you the only goth comedian?
No. That's the thing. No, I'm not. And it's funny because I thought I was, but I wasn't even the first goth comedian, because the first goth comedian, although he was not a stand-up, I still say I'm the first goth stand-up, other than somebody may have stepped on an open mic, step up on an open mic, and it's not for me. But I was really the first stand-up to build myself as a goth comedian. The first goth comedian was Voltaire, who's now billing himself as Aurelio Voltaire, and he would do goth, like funny goth songs. And I did a couple of shows with him and met him a few times. And he's like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. It's a whole different thing. We actually performed at the Buffalo version of the Convergence Festival, which is the biggest goth convention in the world.
Buffalo, New York is where the goths
Buffalo,
go?
New York.
Is it
well, they did this
cold?
year. It wasn't cold. That's the weird thing.
Wow.
It was during the summer. It was so hot.
Oh.
But what happened was, I think like every year they have bids on cities. It's like the Olympics. Who gets the goth festival? I'm serious. So they have it in a different city every year around the world. So one city had it, and I guess whoever was putting it on just couldn't handle it. So Buffalo, there's this woman in Buffalo said, "I'll do it," and so she booked Voltaire, who was based on the East Coast, and my grandmother lives in Niagara Falls, so I was a late addition. I really pursued it, and she's like, "Okay." So I did my comedy and MC'd, and it was so hot that I was like, and I only brought one pair of shoes, which were creepers, which were these really clunky
Yep.
Frankenstein shoes with pointed.
But they're comfortable.
They're very comfortable. And
Right.
so the last day I wore shorts and I got heckled by the crowd. Goths are big hecklers. When I do Goth
Are they
conventions,
really? They
they
seem
have
so
I'm
serious.
always heckled. I'm always heckled. But it was good nature. It was fine. So I introduced Voltaire and I said he's so goth that he pisses absinthe and shits bats. And everybody had a big laugh on that. And it's like, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I keep that for myself? He's like, sure. And we totally bonded over like hecklers
Sure.
that night too. So he was doing that before I was doing comedy then, but wasn't doing goth comedy when he was coming out with his records. And he's sort of now he's kind of expanding his fan base beyond goth and being more of a nerdy, a nerd, just blanket nerd sort of thing. I just did a show a couple of weeks ago at Flappers here in Burbank called Goths and Friends, which had a couple other goth comedians on.
Oh wow.
Locally. And I'm sure there were others around the country, and I'll get to one in a second. But Virginia Jones, who started out in Portland and now is in LA, she's a goth comedian, and she her album is called American Gothic. My friend Elle Font, who I've known for years, just started doing comedy. So she's a belly dancer, very talented in other areas. And so I'm like, you're a starving artist in 4 different fields. Why make it a 5th? But that's what she's doing. And Erica Innes, who I've never worked with before, she's the commander of the Nerd Legion, and she has a goth side. I've seen her in goth clubs, and and there's a few others that maybe don't build themselves as goth comedians, but have goth sides, and I've seen them out in the goth scene. There's also, and this is I've been the goth comedian for so long, and a few years ago, Oliver Graves from San Francisco got on America's Got Talent as the goth comedian.
Oh wow!
And when he started doing comedy, which is about a year or two before he was on, he emailed me and said, "Oh, I thought I was the only goth comedian," and he's not. There's also a transsexual comedian in England, Bethany Black, is very funny as well, and she's a big star in England. So he emailed me. He's like, "Yeah, I thought I was the only one." So I told him about the others, and next thing I know, everybody online's like sending me a clip of him and like, "What is this shit? You're a goth comedian." I was like, "Oh wow, okay, good for him." And I tried to get on Last Comic Standing, not America's Got Talent. I never tried America's Got Talent, so it was awful because I know about America's Got Talent because he slipped through, and I've known other people that have slipped through, but what I'm saying is Last Comic Standing, I know for a fact. And I found out, pretty early on that it's people that have agents. Half the people that are on Last Comic Standing are already headliners, have agents, and are making a living at comedy.
Right.
There's people on Last Comic Standing that have had sitcoms. And America's Got Talent, I remember a few years ago, Wendy Liebman made the finals. Wendy Liebman had an HBO special in '98.
Wow.
How is she like a new emerging talent? But anyway, so Oliver Graves got on there, and his act is completely different from mine. His makeup's different from mine, and his act really has very little to do with goth, except for he's wearing makeup and has a.
It's just how he presents.
Pure like wig. His act is very Mitch Hedbergy, and
okay, yeah.
And mine is very more in your face, and it's really about my life, and goth is a big part of it.
Now, is there more of a brotherhood amongst the goth comedians now that you're?
Oh no. There's no brotherhood amongst any comedians. But
no, it's just all fierce, cutthroat ugliness.
Well, it's a singular art form, so it's every person for yourself. I say that, and all the people that I've mentioned, except for Bethany Black, who I don't know, and Voltaire, who like I say, we've always had fun when we hung out together.
Because it sounds like you all support one another.
I support all of them, and I'm friends
awesome.
with Virginia and Elle Font and Erica, and I support all of them. And I used to bill myself as the one and only goth comedian. Now I know better, but there's not a lot. But like I say, everybody's doing comedy, so there's a little bit of everything. So
Now, you mentioned that your ethnicity when you were talking about being an extra, a Latino extra. Are you Italian, or at least
part
somewhat?
Italian, part
Somewhat.
Italian.
What does Nani think of all this?
What's that?
How does Nana feel about all this? What does she say when she's?
Oh, well, she's in it. She's got Alzheimer's, so she doesn't think a lot of it. But my other grandmother on my mother's side, who was German Scottish, actually one time, and she's 99 now. So
Fantastic.
she actually one Christmas gave me a framed poster which I have on my wall, which is a Las Vegas sign saying currently performing Mark White, which is very nice, which might be my last name, which is quite ironic. But yeah, I mean my whole family is supportive, but it's like you're still struggling, and they don't like to see that. But everybody recognizes the passion that I have to go on stage, and they support that. So it's tough though. It's a tough way to make a living, because especially now there's so many people doing it, and there's only so many spots. And the sad part is, I mean, I know I've got the material, and it's just getting it out there. There's so many avenues and so many things being thrust at people. It's hard to break through the clutter. So,
what's a joke you told that you wish you did? Like, did you ever go too far and say, you know what, not going to sell that one again?
Sure. I guess I'll tell it now. This is not one I regret. This is one I like, and I still do. But I was telling you about my grandmother's 99. I saw her a few months ago, and she looks great. She doesn't look her age, but that's not really a high bar. When you're 99, to look younger than you are, basically all you have to do is breathe. But I'm trying to. I mean, the only jokes I regret are the ones that don't get laughs. So if it doesn't get a laugh, I just drop it, or I rewrite it. I will tell you. No one's
ever said, "Well, yeah, you went too far. You went where you shouldn't go," or
Oh yeah, no. People tell me that all the time, and I'm going to give you an example of a joke that I don't really do too much anymore. But and it's funny because this is something that I worked on a lot, because this is a story I've told people privately, and they thought it was hilarious, and it took me years to figure out how to do it on stage, and I can't really do it on stage anymore because it involves mental retardation. So when I was a kid, when I was in high school, but I wasn't a kid. When I was in high school, we were in a school where they bused the special kids in the small bus, who technically at that time were referred to as retarded, along with the rest of the population. So one of the kids, his name was Julius. He thought he was Elvis, to the point that they wear a jumpsuit to school every day. He had the belts, he had the chops, he had the whole thing.
It's pretty awesome, actually.
Oh no, he had the hair, the chops, the whole thing, and he would sing Elvis. You're like, come on, sing "Don't Be Cruel," because he was tired. He didn't know the words. He would. Every song was the same. Dude, Suspicious Minds. It was the same thing, right? My friend went up to him one day, and this is a true story, and he said, "Elvis is a fag," which is another word you can't say on.
It's not good.
And he said, the Julius, the Elvis, the mentally challenged Elvis guy looks him right in the face, gets right in his face. He says, "Would you like to get raped?" Which I thought was hilarious, because he phrased as a question. Like, there's something worse than getting raped by a mentally challenged 300-pound man in an Elvis jumpsuit in front of your high school peers.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So anyway, so I still think it's hilarious. I will tell you what, I don't regret saying it, and I just said it again, but and people are going to be like, whatever. But I did
write mark letters, not me, okay, guys.
No, please, yeah, please. I could use the interaction, but my co-hosts always get more interaction than me, because they're cute. So, you'd be surprised. My co-host Nicole Six is always telling me, "Oh, somebody heard the podcast and thought it was great." I'm like, "Why doesn't anybody email me and tell me that?" But I was interviewed for a documentary, which I don't know if it's come out yet or not. It's about the history of comedy, and the guy saw me in Vegas. This is right after Carrie Fisher's death, and
She was brilliant.
she was
Brilliant.
brilliant. She
Absolutely
was
brilliant.
she was brilliant, and I was wearing my, as you call it, corpse makeup, but I was wearing my goth makeup on stage, and I said it's weird. It's weird running around the casino because half the people thought I was Carrie Fisher, and big laugh. It's funny. Stop it. It's a joke. It's not serious. I didn't
Yeah, I
kill
get
Carrie Fisher. So he thought it was great. He's like, oh, I want to interview for my documentary. I was like, okay. So I put the makeup on, the whole thing, and during the course of an interview, and the interview was like an hour. During the course of the interview, he asked me, he's like, with the whole, this is even when I filmed it, it was like 2017, so it was even pre cancel culture, whatever shtick everybody's going on about now. So I said during the course of a conversation, which is true, there's only two things. Nobody can be shocked anymore. So there's only two words or three words you can't say on stage, really, which are, and I'm quoting myself, nigger, faggot, and cunt. And actually, you can probably get away with cunt. So
Eve Ensler did.
Right. So you can get
And
away
on
with cunt.
Broadway, no less.
You can get away with cunt, but the other two you can't say. So, which is great in the context of the interview and in the context of the documentary. I actually said those words. So he cuts them up, and you're probably going to do this as a preview for this show. He cuts up a preview, like a 1-minute snippet of my interview, and that's what he put on YouTube.
Oh no!
Without the context, I was like, so I regret.
To anyone listening, we're not endorsing hate speech. Actually, the opposite.
No, but yeah, and which is funny because as far as the N word, which I will refer to from now on, Black comics have every right to say it, and I've heard it used in very funny ways.
I think of Richard Pryor, Red Fox.
Great, and
who'd you listen to growing up? Did you listen to all those guys?
Yeah, as far as the other word, I was at a club. It was maybe the worst comedy show I ever did, and a gay comic used the F word, and the manager yelled at him and said, "You can't use that word in my club," yelling at him in front of the crowd, which I thought was inappropriate. It's fine to yell at him and tell him not to use that.
Right.
And the guy was gay. It's like, come on, I'm only offending myself. So who did I listen to growing up? And this probably dates me, but there are 4 comics I still think are the best, and I think every comic sort of throughout history still goes by them, and they're all horrible people.
Okay.
And so this won't surprise you that I say Bill Cosby, because
to be fair, before we knew what we know, there was a lot of innovative to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah, and that's hard to do.
It is hard to do, especially if I grew up watching the cartoons, Fat Albert.
Sure.
And it's hard to wrap my head around the legacy that is now.
But when you start, my mom used to have a Bill Cosby album when I was a kid, and it's probably if you're looking historically, it's probably one of his lesser albums. But I still have it's called 8:15, 10:15, which was him in Vegas doing the early show and the late show. And the late show was supposedly dirty, but it's Bill Cosby dirty. So he talks about transsexuals and things.
Oh, dear.
In a very 1960s thing. But to me, nobody can tell a story like Bill Cosby. Every comic I've ever seen in my life, especially since I've started doing comedy, I can see the technique. Even if I can't personally do it, I see what they're doing and how they're getting a laugh.
Right.
Bill Cosby, I have no idea how he's getting a laugh, how he knows when exactly to pause, when exactly to do the noise, when exactly to do this. It's amazing. Now, is the guy a piece of shit? Sure. I don't, if he did what they accuse him of doing, which is raping women, and he did it to one woman, he's a piece of shit. It seems like he did it to more than one woman and a lot of women throughout the year. So,
but again, separating the art from the artist, his art is a study in timing.
It's amazing. So, Rodney Dangerfield, coke addict in the 70s, but nobody could tell a joke like him. Just a straight, just one-liner joke. He was the best. There's no question about that. Richard Pryor, crack addict, um, wife beater, all sorts of things. But a master, and I didn't get to the Richard Pryor till late, because I used to watch and I loved him in movies when I was a kid, but I would watch that Richard Pryor live in concert, which everybody says is the greatest, over and over again. And I got to be honest, I think it's good. It's not. I don't think it's the best. When I started really getting Richard Pryor's when they started re-releasing his old '70s albums,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and there's one in particular, which is a pretty obscure one called Black Ben the Blacksmith. And the first 10 minutes of this album are him doing, and it's on a couple other albums as Prison Play or whatever. It's him doing this whole thing about actors going into a prison and doing a play. He does the warden, he does the actresses, he does the actors, he does the prisoners. He does, like 20 different voices in this whole thing. It's all him. And and I can't even imagine to watch it, but to listen to it, you think you're listening to 20 different people. It's amazing. And basically the whole thing leads up to, it has the N-word in it. So that, it's like, we're going to do a play where the farmhand's daughter falls in love with a slave. He goes, we ain't going to do that. Turn on the lights. He's like, it's okay. He gets killed in the end. He's like, well, that's okay. And then at the end, like, at the end of the play, they go off together, and then the warden's yelling and screaming about it.
It's a place in time. I try to look at it too, because it's a place in time that we've
when
evolved
he does
since then, and it's part of the evolution.
But have we?
Is this comedy? I think.
Have we though?
Yes
if you're in the South in a prison and you're with uneducated people, they're using that word.
Well, the thing
is, and they shouldn't be, but they are.
I really try to be caught in any prison anywhere. So that's just how I roll. But it's out there. It's out there. It's absolutely out there.
So it's not him. It's not him doing it for shock effect. He's doing it because that's what somebody would say. So, and then the last one, Sam Kinison, just the aggression, amazing. I remember being a kid, and my father was listening to a Sam Kinison album, and I just couldn't stop laughing. And there was something, I mean, just amazing. And trust me, big drug addict and all sorts of things. Like, it's legendary. I actually gotten to be friends with his sister-in-law Sabrina, who produced his last album, leader of the band, and I know some things about him that you really don't want to find out. But as far as artistically, I mean, just amazing. I mean, it was just to the point where from what I understand, at the time, every other comic started screaming because that's what he was doing, but they couldn't pull it off.
Well, behind most comics, and this is a very
even Carlin.
Yeah, Carlin got loud. They always say behind the laughter is pain.
It is.
Do you find that to be as trite as the analogy is?
The best comedy, not always, because there are comics that their act has zero pain, zero angst, and that's fine. And some of it's funny, but to me, the best comedy is personal, and those four guys definitely made it personal. And people that I really respect, that I really think are funny, really, they really give just tell you about them and give you a piece of them, and I think that's funny, and that's what I've always done with to success and detriment. I mean, I think to really make it in the upper echelon, I think they don't want you to be that personal. So I don't know. I mean, when I see, I always use Seinfeld as an example of what not to do in comedy, what I don't like in comedy. I think his show was amazing. His show was one of the best sitcoms of all time, if not the best, because of Larry David. Larry David is a very angsty guy, very much gives you a slice of his life and his thing. And that's what made Seinfeld great. Seinfeld never talked about masturbation in his act. He never talked about all the weird things that were on the show in his act. His act was always, why you always lose one sock in the laundry? And you're like, all right, whatever. Yeah, I guess you do that. And so I watched Seinfeld's stand-up, and I find it bizarrely mediocre, but people loved it, and it's
Well, there's
very
a lot of people who were on sitcoms who actually were stand-up comedians. Like another one that comes to mind from that
it's a big
era,
thing.
Paul Reiser.
Yeah,
Paul Reiser. In fact, I don't know who it was because it was a third party that I don't know. Maybe you know the quote. Who used to say, the difference between Paul Reiser and Jerry Seinfeld saying the same phrase, and the phrase was, "Who are these people?" And you get
yeah.
the Jerry Seinfeld, that classic,
Oh, these people. Yeah,
"Who are these people?" And then you get, "Who are these people?" The Paul
basically,
Reiser,
yeah,
"Who are these people?"
yeah, yeah.
Who are these people? And there's a lot of,
There was a lot. There was a lot more back then. That was the '80s. So there's kind of there's it's evolved. There's a whole different, and it's evolving still. I still say, and I've been saying for the last few years, and I've kind of tweaked my act to accommodate the real audience, and the one that's really driving this comedy boom now is millennial and Gen Y women. And that's the
yeah,
audience that's going to sustain comedy for a long time. And you could, and it was traditionally an old man art, and Joan
that's
Rivers and
true.
Phil Stiller, Moms Mabley really pioneered women, but it was slow going, and
Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers was great. But I think I mean most of the comedians that have impressed me as of late have been women that I've seen locally, and I think that's where it's going. And also, I hate to be so binary. There's a lot of great gay and non-binary comics too, but
Sure.
and straight white men. I mean, you got to be really creative. The one thing I don't like about new comedy, and hopefully it's getting phased down, is every new comic for some reason has to have a rape joke. And I'm not for censorship, but
It
you got to
seems,
really.
yeah, in bad taste.
I don't. I talk about my life, and I don't do rape jokes because I don't rape. And
And women thank you for that.
well, yeah, well, men too, but
I'm sure.
yeah, well, you'd be surprised. Men love me. I was at a couple of 4th of July parties. I got hit on both. One guy came up to me. It was like,
Who doesn't love a funny bear?
it was so exactly. It was so awkward, and this guy was pretty good looking too. And it was so awkward. It was like me approaching a girl. He's like, "Hey, how you doing? You got a really interesting look. You got the hair and the OT, and it's really nice." And I knew he was like, "Gee, thanks." And so I just it really went nowhere. But he was pretty aggressive.
Well,
But
yeah, it's in those cases.
by the way, you said who doesn't love a funny bear?
Who doesn't love a funny bear?
Women.
Women.
Women my age, white women my age, goth women my age, and younger.
They don't like a funny bear.
They don't.
I don't know.
Women over 60 love funny bears. For some reason, women over 60 love me. Black women are always attracted to me. It's like I'm like the fat white girlfriend in reverse, and and men, they love the funny bears. But yeah, so that's who doesn't. So.
Oh
But,
yeah, I mean, I was Duff before Duff was a thing. I get it.
so, but what were we talking about? We were talking about the new count. So the rape jokes for some reason, it's like
Yeah, that's not cool.
there's no censorship. If it's funny and it belongs in your act, and there's a way that you actually transition to it that makes sense. All right, I haven't heard it. Maybe the only semi-funny rape joke, and I don't even think it was that funny, was when George Carlin said, do rapists get boners before they rape or while they're raping? And it's okay, but even that was a little forced.
It's not his best material, I would say.
Right.
Not at all.
I had a comedian that did my show, and it's funny. This is a first and only, and probably hopefully the last time I ever did this. But there's a very good comedian here in LA, Will Brown, very early 20s, real young guy. And that show I did that was horrible, where the guy was yelling at somebody, and his manager was yelling at somebody in front of the crowd. I saw him, and he really impressed me. He was very funny. And I booked him on my show, but right before the show, I had like a real crisis of conscience, because it was going to be a very very female crowd, very I would say culturally sensitive crowd, and he has a bit which is not his strongest bit, where he says something about, oh yeah, well, and I forget the whole joke, but the punchline is like, oh, that was that girl I raped. And I was like, could
Yeah.
you not do that joke? I hate to ask you this, and if you insist on doing it, go right ahead. But could you not do that one? It's not the right crowd. It's not the right venue. And he's like, yeah, no, I understand. He didn't do it, and he had a great set. So
I
I'm
agree
glad.
with you. That would be something that just isn't funny. I think. I think there's
But
plenty of other funny to be had without going there.
I think it can be funny, but the rape jokes that I've heard are not. Because I
Uh,
never thought, I usually think AIDS jokes would be funny. But Brian Holtzman, who's a veteran comic here, was at the Comedy Store. I remember he did jokes. I never thought AIDS could be funny, and he said, he's like, yeah, you should call in sick from work with AIDS, take a couple of years off, and I thought that was hilarious. And he said,
yeah, I got to
and then
admit.
he said, I had AIDS, I beat it, I took some vitamin C, some coconut press, I was okay. I thought that was funny too, but you gotta. There's a way to work it in. You gotta, I try not to shock people in my act, but I do sometimes.
Well, like we were saying, comedy from pain. I think that if anybody has had the pain of experiencing either AIDS, rape, or anything, I think it's almost impossible to laugh. If you it's. I see there is a dark side, and then there is, I think, another side that just isn't funny. But that's me, and that's and I'm
Well,
not.
I also do a joke in my act, which some people may object to. I've never had actually anybody say something, but I've heard oohs and ahs in the audience where because I love that Suicide Girl stuff. Not the website. I like girls actually suicidal. I do very well with them, and I did that joke not too long ago, and everybody just started making that prune face that you're making right now.
I have the prune face. I totally have the prune face.
And then I was like, come on, suicide's funny, and they started laughing at me. I mean, like, it's a joke, and so anyway. So
but
there you
often
go.
don't people
You want an offensive joke? You got it.
I did ask. Well,
Yes.
I think there's also something to be said too, though. There's a point where if you're not laughing, you're crying.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And so, and this is why, to go back to your point that you made about a half hour ago, where there's funny and there's a comedian, it's finding that out. Because I know a lot of funny people that can't hack it on stage.
Right.
And I know a lot of people that are very funny on stage that are not funny in real life.
It's a persona. I think anybody who steps on a stage and grabs a mic, if you are exactly the same on stage and off stage, I don't know that I've met anyone who is. They may be out there, but there's a persona. There's a part of you, like there's.
But I'm saying somebody that doesn't really joke around off stage, somebody that it's very clinical. It's they just hit the marks and hit the right beat. I would imagine, not to beat on Seinfeld. I imagine off stage he's very. He
doesn't seem entertaining at all.
Around. Yeah. So, but he seems a little very calculating. But it's hard to say. I mean, and you always got to catch people on the. You always got to catch people at the right time. Sometimes getting off stage or preparing to go on stage, you're not getting people at their best. But there's a lot of funny people that, that's why it took me a few times to figure it out, because it's a different thing. You got to figure it out, and every time I go on stage, I got to figure it out, because you have to figure it out for every single audience, and every single audience is different. And the audiences I play for are very strange, and a lot of them are not comedy audiences. I do a lot of rock festivals. I've been booking more rock festivals, horror conventions, goth festivals than I have at comedy festivals.
It's strange. Niches happen. They just happen where you end up, falling into place, and it just works.
Yeah. So that's what happened, and it's great. And I did a show at an S&M dungeon. I did DomCon. I did just strange show. I did horror.
The DomCon.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Where it was all dominatrixes and submissives, and like I said, they're the ones that show me that there are corsets for men that should take your balls and show them right there. And it's hard when you're doing a convention of dominatrixes, because half the people have ball gags in their mouth, so you don't know if they're laughing or not. They're just going, so you never know.
That makes sense. So
I did a horror convention that was the scariest. They didn't have Freddy Krueger or Michael Myers or anybody there. They had Corey Feldman, and it was frightening. He started dancing. Everybody ran to the aisles. I did that joke in front of a crowd mostly in their 20s, and nobody had any idea.
Right? Yeah, because they don't know the
So that's the other thing. You always got to
Lost
freshen
Boys
up your
and-
references, because
yeah.
not everybody's going to get it, and you got to figure out. You got to get things up to date, and people say cancel culture, but what comedian have they really canceled?
I think any comedian that's quote unquote been canceled, they kind of canceled themselves.
Dave Chappelle is making more money than ever. Louis C.K. is not doing things for corporations, but he's making a lot of money.
They're out there.
Yeah, so the thing with Dave Chappelle is, and I've said this before, everybody's offended, with him talking about transsexuals, and I guess his last special he talked about a lot. Why are you talking about transsexuals that much? I think there might be something behind it. He does hang out with Eddie Murphy. So.
Oh, there was a thing. Now, where's Hugh Grant in all of this?
Hugh Grant,
because isn't he in that unique club as well as those who are aficionados?
Hugh Grant's really reinvented himself as a good and serious actor. He was good in The Gentleman. Great. He was good in Cloud Atlas. He stopped doing the whole stuttering cute guy thing, and now he's like really acting, and he's pretty good. He was great in The Gentleman. He was great in Cloud Atlas. He was great in a lot of movies. So he's kind of reinvented himself as just a character actor.
Yeah, so, everybody. I think it's all about reinvention.
But that was pre-cancel culture. That was back in '95. There was no cancel culture then. The whole thing.
No, but there should have been in some cases.
Another Seinfeld anecdote. The funniest thing about Seinfeld is the one that's bitching about cancel culture. It's like, I can't tour colleges anymore. That's cancel culture. They're too sensitive. It's like, who's offended by Jerry Seinfeld's act? You're too un-PC for college audiences. Get out of here. But it's the thing is, if you're offending an audience, you're not making them laugh. So tweak it a little. Just tweak it a little bit. I saw Dice Clay a few years ago, and it's funny. Well, my friend had free tickets in Vegas, so I went to see him, and it was funny how he's kind of tweaked his act. I was surprised and disappointed at the end that he went back to the Little Miss Muffet sat on his tuffet, but before then he was talking about current things. He was talking about Tinder. He was talking about very woman-centric, not woman-centric, but he wasn't no woman bashing like he used to.
I don't know if I could I don't know if I could wrap my head around that. I did see him.
And of course, his crowd is his old crowd.
Right.
But his act is completely different.
Well, I did see him, and I don't know why this didn't go further than it did, because I thought it was amazing. HBO did a series called Vinyl.
Right.
And with Bobby Cannavale. And I'm a huge fan. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've loved everything he's been in. And there is a character that's sort of a side character that's like a sleazy record guy.
No, I saw it. Yeah.
I didn't recognize him at first until I listened to his voice.
Because he had long hair.
Yeah, they really did him up kind of odd. Of course, when I immediately think Andrew Dice Clay, 1990 something Andrew Dice Clay comes to mind.
Oh, he's a good actor.
Oh yes, he is, very much so.
He was in that Woody Allen. This is right after.
And I think he's actually clever and funny. I do, and I'm a woman saying that. I do.
Well, I know. I think he's a good comic. I don't think he's great, but I think he's definitely got great timing, and
he's had some moments.
He has some moments, and he has some moments that you're like, oof. But yeah, no, there's some funny stuff. But the funniest thing about the vinyl thing is at the end when right before they kill him, when he tries to kiss Bobby Cannavale, like I
didn't spoil her. You just spoiled it. It's been
no. But what I'm saying is he actually did some of his old. I didn't spoil the actual thing. He actually did some of his old bits.
Yeah, there was.
Hey, your eyes, they sparkle like the Nile, and you're like, oh, geez, what? They let him improvise that line, but
yeah,
he was in that Woody Allen movie, and they actually were talking Oscar for him, even though he wasn't in it for like 10 minutes, but he was really good. And so when I saw him, it was right after these movies and TV where he was acting again, and he was in Stars as Lady Gaga's father. So the funniest thing, I had Beth Lapidus on my show, who started the Uncabaret, which really started the alternative comedy revolution in the 90s. there was a whole backlash to Dice that started the whole '90s alternative comedy boom, which a lot basically has informed comedy until a few years ago with Sarah Silverman, Mark Maron,
She's brilliant.
Bob Odenkirk, and all these people. Like they all really started with Beth Lapidus's Macabre show because she followed Dice at the Comedy Store, and she, her act, people just didn't like it, and then she started doing her own alternative comedy show. And women would come up to her and say, "Look, thank God for you. We can't go to comedy clubs because it's all men, just talking dirty, and we want real comedy." So I had her on my show, and I said, "This is right after Star Is Born came out." I was like, "What'd you think about your nemesis, Andrew Dice Clay, being in the Star Is Born?" She's like, "Oh, that was so heartbreaking." But she's like, "Yeah, he was fine, but it was surreal, to say the least."
So speaking of moments, we have precious few left.
I know. I can't believe we've gone this far. It's great.
No, it's
we barely scratched the surface.
Well, and you know what? So that means you have to come back. That means you have to.
I will absolutely come back.
And but where can folks see you perform? Where can they see you online? And I'm gonna have links in the clickable links in all of the descriptions and stuff. And tell them a little bit about your show. Where can they find that as well?
I hope to get back to the East Coast very soon. So I always have fun performing out there. Well, I moved back to New York for a little bit, and I got in a really bad car accident. That's why I had to come back here. But I was doing well, and I was doing like really rough rooms in Long Island. This guy's like, he's like, "I've got a show for you, but I don't think I can book you because you're too dirty." I was like, it was at an ice cream parlor. And I did it, and I was the only comic that worked clean because I can work clean. People don't think that, but I can.
Sure. I mean, anyone can. If you're funny, you're funny.
To the point they had a family there with little kids, and they would come back every week just to see me.
Aw, that's awesome.
I hope to get back there. But Goth Comedian.
Well, we got listeners all over the country, all over the world. Folks that, yes, well.
My website. You say that my podcast is one of the top podcasts in the Netherlands and Pakistan. I don't know how that happened, but they love it. So you never know who's listening. But
true.
You can go to my website, darkmarkshow.com. I will update that this weekend with current shows and current dates. I'm at Goth Comedian on all social media, which includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now, Snapchat, all of that stuff. And on YouTube, it's Dark Mark. Check out the channel. And the Dark Mark Show is on every podcast catcher and YouTube. It premieres every Sunday on audio, every Wednesday on YouTube. This week, we're doing something different because I might start another podcast where we talk movies because I listen to a lot of movie podcasts. I was like, well, maybe I'll do a second podcast about it. So my co-host, Nicole Six, and I discuss Alien versus Predator this week on the show. And next week, we have, and I'm very excited, I've been working on this for a while, cosplayer and Hot Topic model, Rachel Holland. So, and we've got other good shows coming up. We actually have coming up, speaking of East Coast, a filmmaker, one of my favorite filmmakers, Hal Hartley, is coming on to talk about his new book. We have other surprises and other guests. We have different things every week. This is what I'm saying about the podcast.
Yeah,
I love that I'm talking to a cosplayer and Hal Hartley. I don't know who's going to listen to both those shows, but right. I hope somebody does.
Well, and
Rocky, this has been just so much fun talking to you.
It is a unique pleasure. This is not over, Mark. This is not over.
Okay. All right.
From one pale girl to a goth guy. This is not
because I didn't even get into the goth revivals and
and I didn't get to do my Ruth Gordon imitation, or my Peter Steele imitation.
Basically, take your blues singing, take it down a few notches, take out the blues influence, put down your guitar, and although there are some guitars in goth music, and
pick up a synth.
Pick up a synth, or just kind of put some echo on your guitar and do droning things, and you got goth and a mechanized beat.
It's just it's literally the music of doom.
Exactly. That's why I
For
love it.
sure.
That's
Well,
why I love
thank you so much for being on. This isn't over. We are going to have you back, and
it.
we can
Anytime.
talk movies and stuff. I'm looking forward
Anytime.
to it.
Is
And
is there a movie you would like to discuss that you love?
there is a movie I absolutely love. I love the movie Rosemary's Baby, probably far too much. I think it's
About that because
brilliant.
I just saw that for the first time like 2 years ago.
And I think, well, look at some of the people that are involved. Mia Farrow, Cassavetes. I never had Cassavetes. How do you say his last name? Cassavetes,
On
right?
Cassavetes.
Yeah, John Cassavetes. But Ruth Gordon.
Great.
And every time she says pregnant, you have to drink.
Exactly.
That's like
and,
the fun,
And then
Rosemary,
you could talk about
pregnant.
Polanski and all of his hijinks.
Oh yeah, that whole thing was just there's.
What about the Tenant? You like the Tenant?
I have not seen it. I didn't. I'm not gonna pretend I saw it. I did not see it. So I is that my homework? I'll make a note of that.
You don't have to, but I'm just saying that's a movie.
Assignment from Dark Mark, The Tenant.
Do you like weird surreal movies?
I like all kinds of stuff. It's really a mood thing with me. Like some of the greatest stuff. One of my favorite movies is Rawhead Rex. It's John Carpenter from the 90s, and it's this kooky Celtic horror movie, and it's kind of at its time. And this, I'm not a spoiler. It was one of those things where as the plot progressed, the way most horror movies vanquished good over evil was a certain way, and this was a whole other way. And I really liked what it was.
That's my homework. Rawhead Rex.
Rawhead Rex. Rawhead Rex.
Well, I'll let you finish. I'll let you wrap up the show. I know you're issue to do that. And
you lose them after an hour, Mark. You know this.
I know. I know this.
You lose them after.
I lose them long before that.
Oh no. It's been fun, and we will do it again for sure. Definitely check out the Dark Mark Show.
Yes. Check me out, my stand-up, all that stuff. So
all the good stuff. So thanks again, Mark, and we'll have you on real soon.
Can't wait, Rocky. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.